He was a millionaire, the owner of a hotel chain, but he had never noticed anyone but himself. Until the day a little girl of only 7 years old looked him in the eyes and asked something that changed everything. "She's cold, aren't you?" That simple question haunted him for days. He didn't know the girl's name, nor the name of the woman trembling at the bus stop. But what began as a nagging feeling in his heart turned into a revolution in his life and in the lives of hundreds of others. What he did next will deeply move you. But be warned, after this story, you'll never look at someone on the street the same way again. So before we continue, get ready. This will change how you experience cold. The sound of notifications fills the silent office. Eduardo Vasconcelos, impeccably dressed and with his eyes fixed on his cell phone, coordinates a video conference meeting while the timid sun barely peeks through the glass window. The city outside awakens hurriedly. Cars crowd the avenues, and he hardly notices the time passing. In the background, the clock reads 7:45. But for Eduardo, the hours no longer mean anything, only goals. His driver awaits him at the door while he finishes reviewing a multi-million-dollar contract. Every decision he makes seems to weigh tons, but not in emotion, only in figures. Eduardo's world is made of results and achievements, of corporate dinners and endless phone calls. The silence of his penthouse is a perfect reflection of his soul, vast, cold, organized, and empty. On his way to work, he speaks loudly on the phone, reprimanding a manager. His dry, direct tone reveals a man accustomed to being obeyed. Around him, the city moves hurriedly. Vendors, pedestrians, and students cross the avenue in the icy wind. Eduardo doesn't see them. The tinted windows of his car are his filter against the real world. A sudden downpour brings traffic to a standstill. The driver, hesitant, pulls the car over to a bus stop. Eduardo sighs impatiently, glancing at his watch once more. The delay irritates him, but the rain forces him to wait. He gets out of the car and takes shelter under the awning, keeping his distance from the others. As he tries to reestablish the call, he notices a presence beside him. A bright-eyed girl with a colorful umbrella watches him silently. Next to her, a woman huddled under a torn blanket is visibly trembling. Eduardo pretends not to see, but something in the child's gaze makes him uneasy. Lara, as she will later discover, holds a small bag of bread tightly and attentively observes his every move. Her eyes are free of judgment, pure curiosity. She notices the gold watch on his wrist, the expensive coat, and then her gaze returns to the trembling woman. The woman murmurs something inaudible. Eduardo looks away, adjusting his jacket, trying not to get involved. The sound of the rain mixes with the noise of the cars, and for a moment, the world seems suspended. The girl then approaches a little, frowning. "Young man!" The voice is small but firm. He pretends not to hear. "Young man!" she repeats, louder. Eduardo looks, surprised by her audacity. "She's cold, aren't you?" The question cuts through the air like thunder. He feels his face heat up, his heart race, but he doesn't answer. The call is still on hold, the contract is still important, but something inside him wavers. For the first time in a long time, Eduardo feels ashamed. He watches the woman, now trembling even more. He feels the weight of the indifference he always justified with phrases like, "I can't help everyone." The girl continues to stare at him until the rain stops and the silence becomes unbearable. Eduardo turns his back, gets into the car, and drives away. But the question doesn't leave him.
If this story touched you just from the beginning, imagine what's to come. Subscribe now and stay with us. Because sometimes a simple story is all we need to remember what it means to be human. The sound of the rain accompanies him for the rest of the day, even after the sun shines again. During meetings and phone calls, Laura's voice echoes in his mind, as if it had lodged itself in some forgotten corner of his heart. She's cold, aren't you? Simple, direct, harmless, and devastating. At night, when he arrives home, the luxury of the penthouse seems oppressive. The white walls, the cold lights, the silence. He opens a bottle of wine, but the taste bothers him. He turns on the television, but can't concentrate. The woman's face at the bus stop and the girl's gaze don't leave him in peace. Edward tries to convince himself that it's just momentary sensitivity. Things like this happen every day, he repeats in a low voice, almost like a mantra. But the phrase sounds empty, like an old excuse that no longer convinces even himself. The next day, as he leaves for work, he asks the driver to take a different route. Out of curiosity, he says. But the truth is, he wants to confirm if the woman is still there. The car slows down as it passes the bus stop. And yes, Anna is still there. The same blanket, the same distant look. This time, however, there's something new. The girl. Laura approaches him and hands him something wrapped in paper, a small, colorful blanket. Eduardo watches from inside the car, unnoticed. He feels a tightness in his chest, a mixture of guilt and admiration. When the light turns green, the driver asks if he should go. Eduardo hesitates, but nods affirmatively. Go ahead. During the drive, he doesn't say a word. At the office, he pretends everything is normal, but his thoughts are elsewhere. During the afternoon, he discreetly researches shelters and social programs in the city. It's a curiosity he himself doesn't understand. Each link he opens seems like a reminder of something he's always preferred to ignore. At night, before going to sleep, he looks out the penthouse window and sees the illuminated city. He thinks about how many people are homeless in that cold. For the first time in years, he feels an emptiness that has nothing to do with business. It's a human emptiness. She lies down, but doesn't sleep. In the darkness, the girl's words return, soft and insistent. She's cold, aren't you? The alarm clock rings, but Eduardo is already awake. He spent the night tossing and turning in bed, trying to push away the discomfort caused by the memory of that morning. The girl's face keeps coming back to his mind. She's cold, aren't you? That question became a mirror, reflecting the part of him that he pretended didn't exist. Hours later, he discovers that Anna had worked years ago as a chambermaid in one of his hotel chain's hotels. A name forgotten in spreadsheets and mergers, a life lost in corporate statistics. The impact of this discovery hits him hard. I took everything from her, he whispers, incredulous. The next morning, Eduardo decides to act. He arrives at the company early and cancels all meetings. He calls the manager of one of the hotels and asks to open a special position for him. No resume, no interview. Just trust me, he says. On the other end of the line, the manager remains silent, confused, but obeys. In the afternoon, he returns to the bus stop. Anna recognizes him from afar and steps back, suspicious. I don't want anything from you, she says, trying to maintain the dignity that time and the street haven't yet managed to erase. Eduardo simply replies, I want to give you back something I took. She stares at him, uncomprehending. He explains, honestly, that the company he bought had laid off hundreds of employees, including her. I didn't know, but now I do, and I want to fix it. Anna listens in silence, her eyes welling up with tears. When he offers her a job, she hesitates. I've been promised fresh starts before, she replies. Eduardo understands the weight of words.
Then let me prove that this one is different. His tone is calm, human, almost paternal. For the first time, Anna sees truth in someone's eyes and accepts it. Back in the car, Eduardo feels something he hasn't felt in a long time: purpose. He looks out the window and sees the city with different eyes. The same faces, the same buildings, but now everything has color, has life, has warmth. In the rear-view mirror, the reflection of his face looks like that of another man. The girl's question echoes once more, but now with a new meaning. "She's cold, aren't you?" Perhaps, he thinks, the cold he always felt wasn't in his skin, but in his soul. The following days pass slowly, but differently. Eduardo wakes up before his alarm clock, drinks his coffee while looking at the city through the window, and for the first time feels the urge to go out without a professional destination. The cold air seems less heavy, as if the world were making room for a new version of himself. Upon arriving at the office, he avoids the usual routine of meetings and numbers. His assistants notice his distant gaze, his less rigid expression. He walks to the glass balcony and observes the pedestrians below, imagining how many stories unfold unseen among them. For the first time, the real world seems more interesting than the corporate one.
At breakfast, he leafs through the newspapers without really reading. The headlines talk about economics, politics, business, the world he dominates. But today, it all seems irrelevant. There's an invisible weight on his chest, a strange feeling that something is out of place. For the first time, he notices the stark contrast between the luxury of his table and the image of that woman shivering in the cold. In the office, the rhythm remains the same. Assistants come and go with folders and tablets. The phone rings, the numbers increase. Eduardo tries to immerse himself in his work, but his concentration eludes him. During each break, he sees flashes of the bus stop, the girl, the blanket, the pleading look. The shame returns like a persistent echo. During a meeting, one of his executives mentions a new expansion project, building another luxury hotel in an upscale area. Eduardo listens, but something in his mind screams, how many Annas does this project ignore? The question pierces him like a silent blade. At the end of his shift, he decides to leave early, something he rarely does. He asks the driver to take him back to the same spot. When the car stops, he observes from a distance. The woman is still there, but the girl is not. Anna is alone, wrapped in the colorful blanket, with a lost look in her eyes. Eduardo hesitates before leaving. The cold wind makes him shiver, and he feels on his skin what that woman feels daily. He walks to the nearby newsstand and buys 2 coffees. With each step, indecision consumes him. What would he say? How could he approach her without seeming arrogant? As he approaches, Anna stares at him suspiciously. He hands her one of the cups, and she hesitates before accepting it. "I don't want charity," she says in a hoarse voice. Eduardo shakes his head and replies, "It's not charity, it's coffee, it's cold." She accepts, with a suspicious but grateful look. The two remain silent for a few minutes. The sound of the rain returns, soft, almost poetic. Eduardo feels a strange sense of calm, as if that simple moment reconnects him with something forgotten. Before leaving, he asks her name. Anna. That's all. And for some reason, that name remains etched in his mind like a seed that has just been planted. As Eduardo gets back into the car, he realizes that for the first time in years, something inside him has moved. That night, Eduardo returns home in silence. The sound of tires on the wet asphalt lulls him into a reflection he can't stop. The streets pass before his eyes like a black and white film. He feels shame, but also something akin to hope. When he gets home, he leaves his cell phone on the table, and without realizing it, doesn't touch it anymore. He turns on the bedside lamp, opens his laptop, and starts researching shelters, reintegration projects, and social programs. Each click is an attempt to understand what motivates him, what makes him feel that something real is finally happening in his life.
Late in the afternoon, she decides to visit the hotel where Anna will start working. She speaks with the manager and asks for discretion, making it clear that she should be treated like any other employee. No favoritism, she warns. The manager, still confused, agrees. On the way back, he asks the driver to turn around and go to the old bus stop. He observes from a distance. The bench is empty. The colorful blanket that Lara had left is folded on a seat, as if waiting for the return of its user. Anna's absence unsettles him. He remains silent for a few minutes, observing the street activity. A street vendor approaches and, recognizing him, comments, "The girl who used to hang out there? She went with a well-dressed man. It seems she got a job." Eduardo smiles discreetly, feeling a subtle warmth in his chest. In the following days, he follows Anna's progress from afar. The manager informs him that she is punctual, polite, and extremely dedicated. She sleeps little, but works with an energy that inspires even the most senior employees. Eduardo listens in silence, proud. On a rainy afternoon, he decides to visit her in person. He finds Anna cleaning the hotel corridors, focused and at peace. When she sees him, she lowers her head, embarrassed. "I still haven't gotten used to being here," she confesses. He replies, "Neither have I, Anna, but I think that's how we start over." His sincerity breaks the ice. For the first time, she smiles. It's a shy smile, but genuine. Eduardo realizes that this simple gesture is worth more than any profit he's ever made. As he leaves, he passes through the reception area and sees a little girl sitting with her mother, holding a colorful balloon. The child's smile reminds him of Lara, the girl who started it all. He makes a silent promise. "One day I will thank her." Days go by, and along with them, Eduardo's public image begins to change. Some employees observe him with curiosity. The once feared boss now greets, listens, and even laughs. Rumors about Anna's hiring spread through the corridors, and opinions are divided. One of his directors confronts him in a meeting. "Do you think it's right to get involved with homeless people? What if they do something wrong? That could tarnish the brand." Eduardo looks at him calmly and replies, "Perhaps what tarnishes our brand is precisely what we never do." The silence that follows is more eloquent than any argument. At night, at home, he opens his notebook and begins to write. The words flow effortlessly. Ideas for a social program that hires homeless people to work in hotels. He names it Project Rebirth. For the first time, he feels he is creating something that has a soul. As he writes, the memory of Lara returns powerfully. He wonders who that girl was, where she lives, and why her innocence had such power over him. He decides to ask the driver to try to find her. She was at the bus stop near Avenida des Flores a few weeks ago. The driver nods, surprised by the unusual request. The next day, Eduardo visits Anna again. She is helping a younger employee organize the stockroom. "Do you always help others like this?" he asks. "Someone helped me when no one else wanted to," she replies, smiling. The response touches him deeply. He understands that kindness is contagious and that Laura's gesture planted something in all of them, a silent current of humanity. Late in the afternoon, Anna asks to leave earlier. She wants to visit the street where she used to sleep, just to remember where I came from. Eduardo offers her a ride. During the journey, she looks out the window and murmurs, "You know, Mr. Eduardo, the cold of the street wasn't the worst part. It was the cold of the people passing by and pretending I didn't exist." Those words hit him like a punch. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, swallowing the lump in his throat. Deep down, he knew he was one of those people, and maybe still is. As he leaves her there,
He sees children playing barefoot and feels an urge to do something more, not out of guilt, but out of necessity. The businessman who once only saw numbers now sees lives. Back in the car, he looks at the gray sky and smiles. For the first time, he understands the true meaning of human warmth. Eduardo's office has never been so full, but he feels more alone than ever. Amidst reports and meetings, he realizes how much the conversations revolve around profit and prestige. He looks at the faces around him and notices nobody talks about people. Everything is about graphs, statistics, goals. He then decides to change that. That afternoon, he calls an extraordinary meeting. The directors exchange curious glances. "I want to allocate part of the annual profit to a new social project," he announces bluntly. Silence falls immediately. "I'll call it Project Rebirth. We'll employ and train homeless people in our hotels." The phrase hangs in the air like thunder. One of the executives laughs, thinking it's a joke. "Are you serious?" asks another, incredulous. Eduardo replies firmly, "More serious than in any merger we've ever done." Reactions range from shock to resistance. Some accuse him of acting impulsively. Others warn him about the risks to his image. But Eduardo no longer listens with the same filter. "The image I want to have is that of someone who did something real," he replies. The phrase echoes in the room and silences everyone. In the following days, he dedicates himself to designing the program. Anna helps him with practical ideas, suggesting training and psychological support. The conversations between the two become long, full of humanity. She begins to gain confidence, and he, inspiration.
One afternoon, while reviewing the initial documents, Anna says, "You know, Mr. Eduardo, when you lose everything, you learn the value of the little things." He smiles, touched, and replies, "And when you have everything, you learn the value of losing a little to make sense of things." The project is starting to take shape. Partner hotels, rehabilitation programs, vocational courses. Eduardo feels he is building something bigger than any building he has ever erected. The press, upon learning of the project, begins to publicize the story. The headlines are positive, but not everyone believes in his good intentions. Some call him opportunistic, accusing him of trying to clean up his own image. Despite all this, Eduardo remains steadfast. For the first time, he doesn't care what people say. Amidst the noise of criticism and praise, he feels something that money never brought: peace. That night, as he was closing the office, he met the driver with some news. "Sir, I found the girl. Her name is Laura. She lives with her mother in a humble neighborhood." Eduardo smiled, touched, and replied, "And when you have everything, you learn the value of losing a little to make sense of things." The project is starting to take shape. Partner hotels, rehabilitation programs, vocational courses. Eduardo feels he is building something bigger than any building he has ever erected. The press, upon learning of the project, begins to publicize the story. The headlines are positive, but not everyone believes in his good intentions. Some call him opportunistic, accusing him of trying to clean up his own image. Despite all this, Eduardo remains steadfast. For the first time, he doesn't care what people say. Amidst the noise of criticism and praise, he feels something that money never brought: peace. That night, as he was closing the office, he met the driver with some news. "Sir, I found the girl. Her name is Laura. She lives with her mother in a humble neighborhood." Eduardo smiled, touched, and replied, "I want to meet her. She changed my life, and she doesn't even know it." The following morning dawns cold and gray, as if the world knew something important was about to happen. Eduardo, dressed in a dark suit,
drives himself to the address the driver gave him. It's a humble street with colorful little houses. The peeling walls seem to smile with time. As he gets out of the car, children run along the sidewalk. He watches them, smiling, until he recognizes a familiar pair of eyes. Laura. The girl stares at him surprised, but soon smiles with the spontaneity that only purity possesses. "You're the guy from the bus stop," she says excitedly. Eduardo kneels and replies, "And you're the girl who taught me what it's like to feel cold." Dona Rosa, Laura's mother, appears at the door, suspicious but cordial. He explains the reason for his visit and thanks her. "Your daughter made me see what I hadn't seen in a long time." Dona Rosa, moved, invites him inside. The atmosphere is simple yet welcoming. The smell of fresh coffee fills the air, and the walls are covered with colorful drawings made by Laura. Eduardo observes every detail, feeling a warmth he hasn't felt in a long time. While they talk, Laura asks, "Is the girl at the bus stop okay?" He smiles. "Yes, she is, and she's working with me now." The girl is thrilled, clapping her hands. "I knew you were going to help." Eduardo stifles a laugh, surprised by the child's unwavering faith. Back in the office, reality catches up with him. Two of the most senior partners are waiting for him. "Eduardo, we need to talk," one of them says. "The board doesn't approve of this project. It's diverting resources and damaging the company's image." He leans back in his chair, remaining calm.
Meanwhile, the press remains divided. Some praise him as an example, others accuse him of hypocrisy. Eduardo reads everything, but is no longer shaken. "What matters is not what they say, it's what we do when no one is watching," he writes in his notebook. At night, he reviews old reports, curious about the period when Anna was fired. A strange unease accompanies him. Something inside him warns him that there's more to that story than he imagines. Upon finding the documents, his heart races. A familiar name appears among the signatures on the mass layoff papers, his own. Eduardo Vasconcelos. The night grows long and heavy. Eduardo stares at the computer screen, trying to understand what he reads. It was him. His name was there, on the document that sealed the fate of hundreds of employees, including Anna. He signed it without knowing, without reading, amidst mergers and hurried meetings. But his ignorance does not absolve him. The weight of guilt consumes him. He remembers Anna's words, "I've been promised fresh starts before," and understands the hidden pain behind them. The cold she felt didn't just come from the streets, but from the indifference of decisions like his. The next day, you arrive at work early, but you can't concentrate. People greet you, and you respond mechanically. The coffee tastes bitter. Your suit feels heavy. Each step to her office feels like a confession about to happen. When he finally finds her, Anna is arranging flowers in the reception area. The smile she gives him destroys him. He hesitates, but decides to speak. "Anna, I discovered something I need to tell you." She watches him, intrigued. He takes a deep breath. "I was one of those who signed your resignation years ago. Without knowing it, but I was." The silence that follows is absolute. Anna slowly lowers the flowers. Her eyes well up with tears, but there is no anger, only disappointment and an old pain resurfacing. "So you took everything from me, and now you're giving it back?" she asks in a low voice, without bitterness, only sadness. Eduardo feels tears burning his eyes. "I didn't know, but I know that doesn't change anything. I want to fix what I did, if there's still a way." Anna stares at him for long seconds. Then she simply says, "You've already started. Just don't ruin it now." She walks away slowly, leaving him alone in the hallway.
Edward feels the ground disappear beneath his feet. For the first time, the success he's always carried seems like a sham, built on names and lives he's never known.
So, image is more important than soul? He asks. His partner stares at him impatiently. Companies don't have souls, Eduardo. They have shareholders. The silence that follows is deafening. For the first time, he feels he no longer belongs to that world. That night, at home, he revisits the numbers. He knows the project will be expensive, that he will face criticisms and even financial losses. But he also knows that if he gives up now, he will lose something much greater, the meaning of his own life. Before going to sleep, write a letter to yourself. If the world thinks you're crazy, it's a sign that you're on the right track. Crazy people change what the cold keep frozen. Fold the paper and put it in your wallet. The chill of dawn seeps in through the window, but this time Eduardo doesn't feel it. Something is burning inside him, and it's not the fire of ambition, but the fire of transformation. Anna's first days at the hotel are challenging. Every distrustful glance is a reminder of the stigma she carries. Some employees whisper, others avoid her, but she remains steadfast, determined to prove she deserves a fresh start. "I owe nothing to the past," she repeats to herself every morning. Eduardo follows everything discreetly. He observes from afar, without interfering. He notices that Anna has something rare: gratitude. She works in silence, with a demeanor that blends humility and dignity, an example that inspires even the most skeptical. During lunch with the manager, Eduardo hears unexpected praise. "She's the first to arrive and the last to leave. She never complains. And you know what's interesting? She's teaching others to see work with more heart." The businessman smiles, proud. One afternoon, he decides to talk to her in the cafeteria. He sits down next to her with a shy smile. Anna, surprised, tries to get up, but he asks her to stay. "I only came to say thank you," he says. She laughs softly. "I think you're mistaken. I'm the one who should be thanking you." The conversation flows naturally. Anna tells little stories about the street, the cold nights, and the friends time has taken away. Eduardo listens attentively, feeling both shame and admiration. It's as if each of her words cleanses a little of the coldness that still lingered within him. At the end of the conversation, she says something that disarms him. "You think you saved me, but it was the opposite. If you hadn't stopped that day, I might still be frozen inside." He smiles without replying. For the first time, he feels truly seen. In the following days, Eduardo begins to act differently outside of work as well. He greets employees, visits smaller units, and in each face he searches for something he previously ignored: humanity. The Rebirth Project begins to take shape, with registrations and support from other institutions.
That night, he revisits the place where he met her. The bus stop is still there, the same cold bench, the same biting wind. He sits down and closes his eyes. Now he understands the true meaning of that question. She's cold, aren't you? The cold he feels now isn't physical. It's the cold of a soul stripped of illusions. He promised new beginnings to others, but realizes his own is yet to come. As he watches the city fall asleep, Eduardo vows to himself he won't stop. The rebirth will not just be a project, it will be his redemption. The sun hadn't even risen when Eduardo arrived at the office. The imposing, silent building seemed like a sleeping giant about to awaken in fury. On his desk, dozens of emails awaited a reply, many with the same subject: image crisis. The headlines splashed it across the screen in large letters: "Millionaire turns guilt into social marketing." The partners were waiting for him in the meeting room.
The atmosphere was tense, almost hostile. "You're destroying what we've built over decades," shouted the oldest. Another added, "You're using company resources for an emotional circus." Eduardo listened to everything in silence, looking out the window at the indifferent bustle of the city. "You call what is, in fact, humanity a circus," he replied calmly. "We are so used to thinking in numbers that we forget to count people." The words hung in the air, but were met with disdain. "Companies don't have hearts, Eduardo. They have targets," said the finance director dryly. He stands up, takes a deep breath, and faces each one of them. "Then maybe I'm in the wrong company." An uncomfortable silence fills the room. The sentence is the trigger for a silent rupture. In that instant, Eduardo realizes that the distance between him and the others is no longer ideological, it's spiritual. In the following days, the pressure mounts. Reporters hound him, headlines ridicule him, and shareholders demand explanations. Some employees support him, others look at him with fear and pity. The man who once inspired respect now arouses doubt and pity. Despite everything, Eduardo doesn't back down. He expands the Rebirth Project and opens a new training unit with the help of NGOs. "Let them say what they want," he tells Anna on a rainy afternoon. "I've lived my whole life trying to please the world. Now I just want to do what's right." Anna watches him, moved but worried. "You're facing giants, and I don't want to be the cause of more pain." He smiles tenderly. "You're not the reason, Anna. You are the meaning." As the days go by, the relationship between the two grows stronger. It's not romance, it's something purer, a connection of souls that recognize each other in suffering and hope. Eduardo finds in her a reflection of what could have been if he had lost everything.
But the storm intensifies. One of his closest directors betrays him, leaking internal documents to the press and distorting facts about the project. The accusations gain traction, and Eduardo's image plummets. Even so, he remains steadfast, until the day he receives a call that makes him freeze. "Mr. Eduardo, the employee Anna didn't show up today, nor yesterday." The cold that runs through his body is the same as that morning when it all began. Eduardo doesn't think twice. He puts down the phone, gets in his car, and drives to the hotel. His heart races. His hands tremble on the steering wheel. When he arrives, he finds the maid's room empty, her uniform folded on the bed, and her name tag on the table. No note, no clue, just absence, cold and brutal. "She didn't say anything?" he asks the manager, almost breathless. "Nothing, sir. She just seemed distant these past few days." Eduardo rushes out, ignoring the rain that begins to fall. The gray sky seems to reflect the chaos within him. He drives aimlessly, revisiting the places she used to frequent: the bus stop, the cafe, the municipal shelter. No one has seen her. Each street seems colder, each face more indifferent. The city that once represented progress now suffocates him with silence and concrete. At night, he parks by the sea, where the wind blows icy cold. He stays there for hours, staring at the dark horizon. "Maybe she's tired of trying," he murmurs. And for the first time, he cries. Not the tears of regret, but those of someone who fears he has failed the only person who restored his humanity. In the following days, Eduardo continues the search, without success. He sleeps little and eats even less. The media takes advantage of Anna's disappearance to attack him again. Headlines cruelly speculate.
Former homeless woman disappears after being used by businessman in image campaign. He reads and tears the newspaper. The sound of the paper tearing is like the cracking of a shell breaking. And inside it, something new is born. For the first time, he understands that he cannot save anyone alone, but he can create paths for others to save each other. Even shaken, he organizes a press conference. Facing the cameras, he says in a firm voice, "This project isn't about me. It's about all the honors that the world doesn't see. And even if nobody believes me, I will continue." The sincerity in his voice surprises journalists. There are no corporate speeches, no calculated defenses. There is only a man, vulnerable and genuine, speaking of pain and faith. His words go viral, not because of fame, but because of the truth. That night, back in his empty office, Eduardo feels the weight of loneliness. The wind enters through the open window, and he closes his eyes, remembering Lara's colorful blanket. For the first time, he prays, not for success, but for a sign.
Outside, the city sleeps. And somewhere in that same city, a woman walks in the rain, her eyes filled with tears and her heart torn between escape and gratitude. Anna still exists, but her destiny and Eduardo's are about to intertwine again. Eduardo's office is dark and silent, and the clock reads 3 a.m. He sits by the window, gazing at the sleeping city. The lights flicker distantly, like cold stars. His coffee cup has long since gone cold. There's a pile of papers on his desk, but none of them matter. Anna's absence consumes him like a shadow. In recent days, the world seems to have shrunk. The streets, once full of life, now seem like inescapable labyrinths. The rebirth project continues, but he feels that something essential has been lost. Every social action, every speech seems empty without Anna's serene gaze to remind him why it began. He tries to work, but mental exhaustion overwhelms him. His body obeys, but his mind wanders. Sometimes he imagines seeing her in the crowd, a female figure with a colorful blanket, a faint smile that the wind erases. But when he blinks, it's just an illusion. On a gray late afternoon, he decides to return to the bus stop where it all began. The same bench, the same biting wind. He sits down, feeling the cold pierce his expensive suit. He closes his eyes and listens to the sound of the rain. For the first time, he understands what true silence is. Not the absence of sound, but of purpose. A woman walks by and recognizes him. "You're that young man who helped the girl, aren't you? Her life has changed so much. She always talked about you." Eduardo looks up, surprised. "Do you know where she is?" The woman shakes her head. "She said she needed to find something before coming back, but that she would return." The phrase hits him like a breath of hope. Perhaps there's still time. He returns to the car, his heart torn between faith and despair. He turns on the radio, and an old song plays, a soft melody about new beginnings. He smiles slightly, sensing that the universe speaks in subtle ways. In the following days, he continues working on the project, but something changes. He begins to delegate what he previously centralized. He lets others take the lead. "The rebirth can't depend on me," he tells the managers. "You have to depend on everyone." During a meeting, a young employee asks, "Mr. Eduardo, why do you continue even with so much criticism?" He calmly replies, "Because it's not about what they say. It's about what we feel when we look at the cold and choose to warm someone." At night, alone, he walks to the balcony and feels the cold wind on his face. This time, he doesn't close the window.
He allows himself to feel the cold. And he understands. The cold was never the enemy. It was the calling.
3 years have passed since the day of the inauguration. The city, which once seemed indifferent, now displays posters of Project Rebirth on every corner. We employ, we welcome, we start over. Eduardo Vasconcelos' name has become synonymous with hope. He continues to lead the project, but with a different kind of serenity, that of someone who no longer seeks recognition, only purpose. On a winter morning, the air is cold, but the heart of the city feels warmer. In the new central shelter, dozens of people have coffee, laughing and chatting. At the counter, Anna serves bread and listens to stories. From volunteer, she became coordinator. Her gaze carries strength and tenderness, the gaze of someone who has faced the abyss and learned to build bridges. Eduardo enters the room with calm steps. Everyone greets him, and he responds humbly. He no longer wears expensive suits, only simple, comfortable clothes. He carries a small notebook in his pocket, where he jots down names, dreams, and ideas. "These are my new reports," he often jokes. On the wall of the shelter, there's an old photograph, the bus stop, the cement bench, and Laura's colorful blanket. Below, a phrase in delicate lettering. Some questions don't need answers. They need action. Eduardo stands before it every day in silence. It is his daily reminder of who he was and what he chose to be. Lara, now 10 years old, visits the shelter frequently. She grew up curious and generous, with a sparkle in her eyes reminiscent of the girl who once disarmed a millionaire. She helps her mother distribute clothes and enjoys sitting next to Anna, listening to stories. "One day, I want to work here too," she says. Eduardo watches her from afar, smiling. He feels pride and a kind of paternal tenderness. "She's the spark of all this," he comments to Anna. The woman agrees, moved. Sometimes God speaks through children, because only they can be heard by hardened hearts. Over time, the Rebirth Project transcends borders. Other cities, inspired by it, create their own versions. Eduardo's name appears in awards, news reports, and events, but he never changes his tune. It wasn't a project, it was a cure. On a cold night, he revisits the bus stop where it all began. The bench is different, renovated, painted. Where Anna used to sleep, there is now a small metal plaque. Here, a new beginning was born. May the cold never conquer the human heart. Eduardo sits on the bench and closes his eyes. The icy wind touches his face, but the cold no longer bothers him. He feels the warmth of the world he helped transform, a warmth that came from within, ignited by a simple question asked by a girl who saw what he did not see. Before leaving, he writes one more sentence in his notebook. "It wasn't about her feeling cold. It was about me learning to feel." He gets up, smiles, and walks through the light snow that begins to fall, certain that wherever there is indifference, there will always be someone ready to ask and offer warmth. You saw what a question was capable of transforming. Now imagine the power that exists within each of your gestures. If this story warmed your heart, subscribe to the channel and help spread this warmth around the world. Because feeling is the first step to change.
Eduardo smiles. For the first time in a long time, the cold doesn't hurt. It only reminds him that he's still alive. The day of the inauguration of the main center of the Rebirth Project arrives. It's a clear morning, but the air still carries the chill of winter. Journalists, business people, and volunteers gather in front of the new building. An elegant sign announces a new beginning, because everyone deserves shelter. Eduardo arrives early, his heart racing, not out of vanity, but out of emotion. He walks through the corridors, still smelling of fresh paint, greets the employees, and feels the genuine pride of seeing lives rebuilt there. Each face is a story of overcoming adversity, each smile a flame rekindled. Before the speech, he isolates himself for a moment. He looks at his own reflection in the glass and barely recognizes himself. You are no longer that man in the suit and the emptiness, he thinks. You are someone who has learned to feel cold and to warm the world. He takes a deep breath and heads for the stage. The auditorium is full. Cameras are pointed at him, but for the first time, Eduardo doesn't feel afraid of the spotlight. Some time ago, a child asked me a simple question, and it changed my life. Today, I want that change to reach other lives as well. As he speaks, the audience listens in absolute silence. The words flow from the heart. He talks about Lara, the bus stop, Anna, and how empathy is the most powerful investment there is. Because when we warm someone, the warmth comes back. It always comes back. At the end of the event, a murmur begins in the back of the audience. He pauses. The audience parts, and a figure walks towards the stage. It's Anna, wearing the hotel uniform, clean hair, erect posture, tears in her eyes. He stops in disbelief. Time seems to slow down. Anna climbs slowly, and the two gaze at each other in silence. There are no words, only the reunion of two worlds that have healed together. The audience applauds, standing. Eduardo holds back tears. "I said I'd be back," she whispers. He replies emotionally, "And I said I'd wait." The audience is moved. The moment is simple, yet immense. A man and a woman who braved the cold and transformed it into warmth. At the end of the event, Eduardo watches Anna helping other people register for the program. Lara arrives, now with her mother, and hugs him. "I told you you were going to help more people," she laughs. He smiles back. "You didn't just help one person, Lara. You started it all." The sun begins to shine brighter. Eduardo looks at the sky and feels a quiet certainty. Sometimes change begins with an innocent question and ends with a transformed heart.